You good? Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you please do the roll call for this evening?
Councilwoman Melly Garthwaite,
Melly Garthwaite, Council at Large, present.
Councilman Brian Locks,
Brian Locks, Council at Large, present.
Councilwoman Ann Heffernan is absent. Councilwoman Michelle Coletti,
Michelle Coletti, 2nd District, present.
Councilwoman Sarah Akbarelli is absent. Councilman Gary Donovan,
Councilman Gary Donovan, 4th District, present.
Councilman Edward McMillan,
Edward McMillan, 5th District Councilman, present.
Councilwoman Dawn Callahan,
Dawn Callahan, 6th District, present.
Councilwoman Catherine Tucker,
Councilwoman Catherine Tucker, 7th District, present.
Councilman Christopher Vargo,
Councilman Christopher Vargo, 8th District, present.
Councilwoman Katie Muller,
Katie Muller, 9th District, present.
Councilman Stephen Johnstone,
Councilman Stephen Johnstone, 10th District, present.
and Chairman Nicholas Pascal.
Chairman Nicholas Pascal, present.
We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. First up tonight, we have a public hearing. Councilman Donovan?
Thank you, Chairman. Time is now 6:56. We have a public hearing of Communication C from the June 10th, 2024 agenda from Mike Agello, Deputy Corporation Counsel, regarding the potential sale, lease, or transfer of a portion of 24 Front Avenue. Does anyone from the public like to speak on this? For a second time, does anyone from the public like to speak on this? And third time, anyone from the public like to speak on this? Seeing none, public hearing is closed at 6:57, Chairman.
Thank you very much. We will start public session at 7 o'clock as noticed. So give us a couple minutes on that. Thank you.
Okay, it is now 7 o'clock. We will enter into public session at 7 o'clock. Would anyone like to speak before the city council? Miss? Just state your name and address for the record, please. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Georgiana Jetty, 90 Anderson Avenue. I am going to be representing the Sandy Point volunteers down at Sandy Point Bird and Beach Sanctuary. And one of the first things I wanted to do, I started volunteering down there in 2013. And at that time, it was a parking lot, okay? And the people that took the buyouts at that time were also the people that resurrected that whole area, and we built all the bird sanctuary, gardens and things of that nature. And then when the new mayor came in, when I heard that they were going to raise the road and dismantle all of the work that we had done, I was devastated. And I said to her at that time, I'm devastated. But she promised that she would redo everything. And I have to tell you that it's better than ever. If no one has been down there, I'm sure you should go, because it's absolutely wonderful. And although she's not here, I would like to issue my thanks to her. I wanted to let you know that the wildlife guards, which are sponsored by the Audubon Society, are going to start working down there on next Tuesday, I believe. And their job is going to be to do maintenance, keep the gardens in shape, also clean up. And also the volunteers are going to be working down there. In fact, I met with Melly and some of the people today. In fact, I met with Audubon, Corey Folsom O'Keefe. And I met this afternoon at 3 o'clock with some more volunteers. And we are hoping that this area will remain pristine. To me, in my lifetime, I had always, after I retired in 2010, I had already wanted to do something down at this end of town, which was always, I thought, neglected. And this is the first time I can take pride in our section of the city. I see so many good things developing down there. And I want to let you know that the volunteers are going to work to maintain it so that it remains what I consider the gem of the city. A couple of things have come to our attention. One of them is the dogs on the beach. Now, I did work with Audubon, and I got a new sign down by the tidal gate, but there are signs all over the place. Dogs are not allowed on the beach. Now, I have 2 dogs, and I walk them every day, but not on the beach. And I think it's becoming a problem for the Audubon people who are involved in the sanctuary down there. So I think that maybe that's something that Melly is going to talk to you about tonight, and I wanted to support that 100% in what she says. Also, I have a concern about the gate. We have a nice gate down there now. It's beautiful, but I don't know if it's being locked at night. So that is a concern of mine, especially, well, it's a concern of mine all the time, but especially with July 4th coming up, that's going to be a big problem. So if the other gates in the city are locked, and I don't know if they are because I'm not around the city, but if they're locked, then Sandy Point should also be locked as well. Because if you put that much money into an area, you want it to stay exactly the way it is. Clean, neat, wonderful. Also, my other concern, and I think I said to Michelle, one of the things that we really like to see down there, if it's possible, is a viewer on the observation deck. If there is some way we could get a grant for that, it would be like tremendous, because we have so many people that come. We have a lot of birders, obviously, but we have local people that come down there and they would like to take a look. And it is so beautiful that that would just add to it. So those are my current concerns. I want you to know that we're very thankful, and we hope that this part of the city will remain topmost on your list. I know there's a lot of part of the cities that need help, but we're very thankful for our part. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak before the city council? For the second time, would anyone like to speak before the city council?
Hi, good evening all. Vanessa Suarez, 740 Quinnipiac Avenue, New Haven. I want to start today again by addressing the way that I was treated at the West Haven Police Commission meeting by the chairman. As I mentioned in the last meeting, the video is public on our Justice for Roya page, and it has over 5,000 views. And we know that following the last meeting, some of you took the time to go to our page and look at the video, and we appreciate that. And we hope that that also means that you've taken the time to speak to your colleague about the way that he behaved. I think the video speaks for itself. As many members of the public have commented on that video, it's horrifying, it's disgusting, it's really shameful that a chairman would conduct themselves in this way at a public meeting towards young women who are also victims, who are also survivors of violence, and are speaking as victims and as advocates for other women who have been impacted by violence and are no longer here with us. And so, we've spent time looking over the rules of procedure of how your meetings are to be governed. And, it is clear there that the chairperson shall always preserve order and decorum. And, I think that video shows that that was not the case. There are many ways in which the chairman should have conducted himself and didn't. And so I'm hoping that there is a conversation being had amongst you all and as well with the body, the police commission body, because no one reacted that day. And the way that they treated us treated me has lasting impacts and impacted other women. There's who I'm accompanied with today, Hazel. She is a West Haven resident, and she was with me that day when the commissioner treated me that way. And she spoke after and expressed to him how unsafe she felt and how scared she was by his reaction and the way that he spoke to me. And I want you all to take that into account. I want that to matter because we've been coming here for months now advocating for a woman who was murdered due to domestic violence. And this is all about patriarchal violence and how it shows up in your community specifically, and trying to help you have an understanding of how that showed up in Roya's life and why we lost her. And it's not okay for myself or for other victims and survivors to experience patriarchal violence as we're coming here trying to address that with you all. I think that is not acceptable. And I think it shows us that we're walking backwards instead of forward. We've come here for months asking you all to look into the police misconduct, to look into the police negligence that has taken place in Roya's case. There has not been any significant advancement or updates in her case. The arrest of Hamidullah Hafizi in April of this year is really insignificant in Roya's case. He was arrested for charges resisting an officer. It really does nothing to bring justice for Roya. It does nothing to make the family feel like their cries for help and justice are being heard. And so we've come to you and we've asked ourselves, and they keep asking us, why is no one listening to us? Why are we being ignored? Who else do we have to go to? These are the questions that the family has. And we keep coming to you all because we believe that together we can do something about this. It's still not too late to show up for Roya. Her case could have been a cold case after the 1-year mark. But because we continue to advocate and demand justice for her, because we said her case mattered, there has been a continued investigation, and there hasn't been a closure on this case. But that's not enough. And what we want from the city to do is to seriously look at Roya's story and see how other women are Roya. So many of us show up for Roya because we see ourselves in her story. We recently heard from the mayor that she has decided to put some funding in the budget towards one social worker and then more funding for police technology. I believe it was specifically to purchase software resources to allow the police to better obtain and decipher information on a phone after a search warrant is granted, which will assist in escalating the process in the future. But it feels like none of you guys were not being heard because we've been coming here for months talking about police negligence, police misconduct. We've been trying to raise awareness on the fact that Officer Sarasi failed to apply for search warrants in due time. There's so many ways in which Officer Sarati failed this case, and we've brought that to the attention.
Point of order again, ma'am. I know we discussed this, Vanessa.
I'm sorry?
About
What?
using the officer's name. Just all you have to do is say officer.
I've been using Sarasi's name here the
No,
whole
and that-
time. I thought it was the commissioner's name.
No, both. Because they're not here to defend themselves.
Did you said last time you would look into it with the attorney on this matter?
I
because-
actually did not look into it with the attorney. I did not bring that up with him. I thought the situation was handled. I thought we came to an agreement on it, but I will definitely make sure after this meeting.
I would
that's
appreciate
on
it
me.
because it feels very arbitrary. You know, for months we've been on the record saying that officer's name and it's been fined. And after the police commission tells us we can't say Sarasi's name, now we can't say it here. And then we couldn't say the commissioner's name. And so I'm just trying to understand. And if I myself and others are going to be held to the rules, then I also expect the commissioner who insulted me in that meeting to also be held accountable for the way that he violated the rules of order. So I think there's a lot of conversations to be had, and I would appreciate you looking into that.
Absolutely, I would definitely will.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So just to wrap up my point, I was saying, the police have failed to apply for a warrant in due time. They failed to properly investigate Roya's case. They have failed to collect evidence in due time. Part of why we don't have critical evidence is because they took more than a week to retrieve this evidence. And so after coming here for months and months and talking about how the police didn't take the right steps, and to hear that what is being done is funding the police rather than directly funding victims who are trying to escape violence and are being failed in the process. That's very disappointing. And so what we would like to see and what we keep coming here for is to work with you all to make sure that there are more resources being provided to victims who are trying to escape violence, because we don't want there to be another Roya. There doesn't need to be another Roya. There's a woman murdered every single month across Connecticut, across all the cities in Connecticut. That is very devastating. And I don't want to be here advocating for another woman who was murdered because we failed to look at all of the ways in which they're being impacted and failed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak before the city council? For a second time, would anyone like to speak before the city council? For the third and final time, would anyone like to speak before the city council?
I just have the one thing
Okay.
I have to read.
Perfect. We have one letter that was sent in to us that the clerk will read at this time.
Okay, this is a letter from Beverly Garrettson of 200 2nd Avenue. It was to the West Haven City Council. I'm writing in support of the update to Ordinance 170-15, number 3, regarding the Cindy Point Bird Sanctuary, beach and marsh area. This area has been deemed an IBA, important bird area, which means that it provides critical habitat for the conservation globally of bird populations for both migration and breeding. Dogs have no place on the beach as birds see them as predators and often will abandon the nest, leaving chicks and eggs vulnerable. Birds cannot distinguish between a dog, a coyote, or any other type of predator. Even dogs on leashes will frighten the birds. I am also in favor of a fine of the $250 with signage posted at the entrances stating no dogs allowed and the fines they will incur. As these birds can travel thousands of miles to our shoreline, and as stewards of the Sandy Point, it is our duty to provide the best possible habitat that West Haven can provide. Thank you for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to call it again. Would anyone like to speak before the city council? Second time, would anyone like to speak before the city council? Third and final time, would anyone like to speak before the city council? Public session is now closed at 7:14. We will now convene the June 24th regularly scheduled council meeting, also at 7:14. I am looking for a motion to approve the journal of June 10th. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstentions? One abstention. Will the council clerk please hand out the communications for this evening?
Communication A from the tax collector regarding overpayment refunds for June 2024, which will be filed with tonight's minutes. And communication B from Councilwoman Garthwaite regarding an amendment to Chapter 170, Section 170-15, domestic animals of the ordinances of the city of West Haven, which will be assigned to the Legislative Matters Committee, Chairman Vargo, and that concludes our communications for this evening, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. We will now recess into committee meetings at 7:15. First up, we have the Finance Committee, Councilwoman Tucker.
At 7:15, I would like to convene the Finance Committee, and I have here present with me Councilman Vargo, Councilman Locks, and Councilman Johnstone, and myself, Councilwoman Tucker, acting as chair. First up are MARB updates. Do we have any updates from MARB?
I don't believe we have a MARB update because they canceled the last few meetings, and the next meeting is the 27th, so later on this week.
Okay. All right. So we'll look for that for the next meeting. And I would like to ask Mr. Centforti to come up and speak to the 2023 annual report. And Mr. Gormany also, if you have any input, please feel free to come forward as well. And I apologize for butchering your name.
That's right.
Thank you.
All right. If everyone has the outline, the presentation, I'm just going to use this to kind of highlight some of the highlights from the June 23 audit. So again, just especially when we get to recommendations, just to remember that whatever we're talking about was the condition as of June 23. And think a lot of things might be different today. So starting on page 3, the highlights, there's an unmodified opinion on the financial statements, which is the kind of opinion that you're looking for, no qualifications or scope limitations. MD&A, just the management discussion analysis is a good executive summary of the major events during the fiscal year and some of the major changes as compared to the prior year. So some of the highlights, general fund budgetary highlights, you had additional appropriations of the $2.1 million. It also talks about some of the revenue and expenditure budget variances and some of the drivers that cause those variances. Section on capital assets talks about significant transactions, some of the major purchases, the biggest one being the high school construction project. And then your long-term debt decreased by $4,653,000 during the year. Just some of the other highlights in the financials on page 41. There's expenditures that exceed the budget. So again, we're going to recommend that ideally those would come to council and those over expenditures would be approved during the year so that when we got to the audit report, those transfers that are done before the audit is completed. There's a new footnote on pension fund concentrations. So disclosures, investments in any one type entity over 5% and alternative investments. The city has several of those. So being 5% or over is a concentration of risk. So that footnote kind of talks about some of the investments that are over that 5%. There was a new standard implemented during the year, the software subscription standard. So this basically, in 2022, we had a lease standard. This software subscription standard is basically the same accounting just for any software subscriptions that are multi-year. So your accounting policy notes are updated. There's a new liability recorded for these subscription arrangements, and there's a prior period adjustment note that adjusts your assets and liabilities at the beginning of the year. So general fund, we're on exhibits C and D. Page 21 and 23, your unassigned fund balance at June 30 was $14,758,000. That represents 8.97% of expenditures and transfers out, which is up from 4.89 last year. So that's a very good jump and a good trend, increasing that percentage. The net change in fund balance was $6,776,000, and we'll talk a little bit later, a few slides later, about what drove that increase. So on the revenue side, your revenues and other financing sources were in excess of budget by $829,000. That was driven by municipal revenue sharing grant that was unbudgeted for $581,000, and sale of some assets of $303,000. So the real increase in fund balance came from the expenditure side. So expenditures and other financing uses were under budget by the $5,947,000. That was driven by general government function. Contingency fund was not spent, $2.6 million. Public safety was over budget, $1,012,265. Public works and highways maintenance was under budget by $1,631,000, and debt service budget was under by $2,185,000. So that's how you ended up with the $6 million increase in fund balance. Those two numbers together. Allentown Fire Department.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Councilwoman.
Sorry. Is there an amplifier on the mic, or I'm having a lot of trouble hearing?
All right.
Yeah, just pull it closer, I think.
Yeah. It's not. There's a tech thing that's wrong with it. It's not like acting like a speaker either. So.
All right. So this is not any better. No.
You have to if it's facing down, so
Yeah,
you
tilt it up
face
towards
your mouth.
All right. When I look down, though.
Oh, right.
No, never mind.
So is this there? All right.
Yeah,
there it is.
Thanks.
All right. I can hear it now.
You're like on it almost.
All right, Allentown Fire Department, page 23 and 97 to 98. Revenues for the year were almost $9.2 million. It's about $6,000 in excess of budget. Expenditures and transfers out were $9,174,000, about $9,000 below budget. Transfers out for trucks and other capital, so those are some capital non-recurring projects with the $1,145,000, so increase in that position about $15,000, basically a break-even year on a $9.2 million budget. So again, we'll talk about it. We'll look at the percentage, but the town is the fire district needs to continue to fund the pension plans and get that percentage funded up. They have been funding more than the recommended contribution, so we're definitely, that would be a good trend to continue to get that number to a much higher funded percentage, and we'll look at that in a few more slides. The sewer fund revenues were $12.7 million compared to $11.8 in the prior year. Expenditures and transfers out were the $12,923,000, and that was between operating of $8 million, capital expenditures of $1,041,000, debt service of $2,091,000, a transfer to the general fund for some of the debt service general fund pays for, and then a transfer of the capital improvement fund for a sewer project that was approved. So basically, overall, a net decrease of $189,000 last year in equity. Internal service funds. So you have 3 internal service funds. The details are on page 120 to 122. So all your funds had positive change in net position, which was good. Net position unrestricted for medical is 2.4. You're usually looking for about 25% of expected claims as in reserve. So you're right on point where you need to be with that. The net position for the general liability fund is a negative $425,000, and for workers' compensation is a negative $7.7 million. So for those, we kind of look at what the current ratio is. current assets to pay current liabilities. Your goal is 1. So general liability is 0.04%, or 0.04, and workers' comp is 0.8. And that's because a lot of those liabilities are longer term, so they're not really expected to be funded in 1 year, but you want to at least have enough money to pay the current amount. So the OPEB contributions are in the medical fund. The total contributions during the year were $200,000. The total contributions life to date are $525,000, and that was transferred into the new OPEB trust. So you'll see that new financial in the 24 audit. So pension, so the police plan.
Mr. Centrofani, one second. We do have a question, I guess.
Sure.
Going back to page 13 on your slide, the current ratio, could you explain that to me one more time? Specifically the general liability where we're at 0.04 and the goal is 1.
So the current ratio is how much current assets, normally cash and investments, do you have against what your current liabilities are, so the amount to be kind of liquidated within the next year. So that's basically saying that you have 4% of the assets that you need to pay your current liabilities. So you're kind of always behind the curve. And then there are long-term liabilities that at some point need to be funded also. So it's just giving you a gauge of that we need to get some more money into that fund so you can at least pay your current obligations and from a cash flow standpoint.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Pension funds, so for the police plan, the percentage funded is almost 71%. It's a decrease from 73%. That decrease was really driven, although the market was up, was driven by your change in assumptions for your discount rate. So that had a $3 million impact on your liability. So it brought your percentage funding down for the current year. And that's the trend is most of the discount rates are moving below 7%, across all municipalities. Allentown pension, you did have a 5% increase roughly, and the funded percentage up to 39% from the 34.3. Again, that's a low number. Well-funded plans are 70 and above, so it's something again to pay attention to. The contributions in excess of what the actuary recommended last year were $973,000, so that's certainly helping increase your funding percentage. So again, as we mentioned, the OPEB trust was not funded at June of 23. It is in 24, so you'll adding the 24 contribution, I don't know how much that was in the budget, so you'll probably have $700,000 or so against a $229 million liability, but you got to start somewhere, so it's great that that's been set up, and hopefully the funding can increase going forward. And Allentown at this point has, again, no trust, not funded, and no monies towards that liability. Their liability is about $24.9 million. So I'm moving on to the smaller report, the federal and state single audit. So for the federal single audit, the city expended $26 million of federal grants. We had an unmodified opinion on compliance. We did have some repeat findings. The green ones are our new findings for this year as compared to last year. The programs that we did test are child nutrition, school lunch, the ARPA money, special education, student support, and education stabilization fund, which is commonly referred to as ESSER. So the city did file a corrective action plan, both with the data collection, the federal government and the state, and so that addresses what the plan is to address these findings. It has the city's response to that. Again, state single audit is mirrored on the federal, so again, an unmodified opinion on compliance. The The city expended $77.8 million in state monies. The internal control findings are the same as federal because internal control, sits on top of that, of both federal and state money. The program findings: a child daycare, community conservation grant for reporting, and school readiness, the subrecipient monitoring, and those are all repeat findings. The programs that we tested are Alliance District, which is education grant money, child daycare, tiered pilot, which used to be the state-owned property tax, body-worn cameras, curbside food scrap, and unit-based pricing, which was a new grant last year, and your clean water projects. As far as recommendations, again, I didn't put them all in here. Everyone should have the complete document. We did have a couple new ones related to bank reconciliations being done on a timely basis. So that one was added. General ledger maintenance, just looking at the closing process and reconciliations that need to be performed at year end. Capital assets, just having a formal policy to be able to update the capital asset records. So as far as policy and procedures of how to go about aggregating that data to be able to get the information you need for the financial statements. And then grant accounting, to the extent possible, there's always exceptions. We are recommending that grant revenue is recorded, has been recorded in one fund and transferred to another fund. And because our reporting requirements aren't expenditures, that just makes it very confusing for the city to monitor and report correctly. So basically, if you're spending ARPA money, you should not transfer it to another fund. You should spend it out of the ARPA fund. That way the accountability and transparency is all in the same place. There was one recommendation removed from last year related to the education department obtaining certified payrolls. We were able to get those this year. So part of another letter that you should have received or will receive is our required communication. It just talks about the audit process, talks about estimates and what the significant estimates are for the city and that we do audit those estimates. Talks about the disclosures, that they're clear and concise. It does also attach to that letter are the material adjustments, so any significant audit adjustments that we needed to do, again, which goes back to that recommendation. So are listed and that we are independent of the city. So we get a year off, no new statements to implement for 2024. So that'll hopefully make the process a little easier. In 25, we revisited compensated absences, the accrual, the liability for sick and vacation time, and that's just to kind of get everybody consistent in the calculation. And then in 2026, they're changing the reporting model again, so the financial statements will look different than they do now. Not radically, but they will be different in 2026. All right. So that's my high-level summary. Be happy to answer any questions.
I'd like to open it up for discussion. Is there any discussion?
Thanks for coming and thanks for putting this together. When was the audit date on this?
May 20 something. The date we were issued, May 28th.
So this audit was May 28th. When's the next audit?
We've started the audit process for the 24 audit already.
Okay.
So, I mean, the goal is December 31, which is the normal target date for all municipalities.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion, Mayor?
I just want to clarify, are you asking what date the audit was completed or what fiscal year it is as of?
No, I just want to know the results of this audit came from an audit that was executed on what date? Is that right?
Yes.
May 28th?
Yeah.
May 28th is it was the audit that fixes our responsibility. As of that date, we were done with our audit procedures.
Gotcha. And that's 5/28/2024, and the next audit will be completed by 12/31/24.
Right. That's
Okay.
that's the plan.
Thank you very much.
But I just want to clarify for anybody new to the process or is watching. So we were behind in fiscal year 2022, fiscal year 2023. So Joan PKF helped us to catch up for fiscal year 2022 was completed in November. This is fiscal year 2023. This is an audit as of fiscal year 2023 that was completed in May. That catches us up. And then for December, it will be fiscal year 2024. So we're pretty much caught up, but this audit is auditing half of 22 and half of 23. Correct?
Well, fiscal year July
Fiscal year
1.
23, half of 22.
Right,
and
July
half of
1,
23.
22 to June.
Okay,
Yep,
thanks.
that's correct.
Thank you. Is there any additional discussion? Okay. Yes, Councilwoman Coletti.
I apologize, Chairwoman. Within committee or council as a whole?
Council as a whole.
Okay, just a quick question. The corrective action plan, are we going to go through that separately? Or?
Yes, I was going to ask Mr.
Okay.
Gormley to come
Thank
up
you.
afterwards, but I just wanted to give you an opportunity to ask whatever questions you have of. Okay. All right, thank you. Mr. Gormley? Would you please just take an opportunity to kind of walk us through the corrective action plan?
All right. Good evening, everyone. So, thank you, Mr. Centofanti, for presenting the fiscal year 23 audit, again, as of June 30th of 2023. As part of the fiscal year 2023 audit, we have to present a corrective action plan for some of the recommendations or the material weakness or significant deficiencies that Mr. Centofanti has identified within the city. So, as part of the audit packet, you should have received a corrective action plan that I worked on with Mr. Taylor and the finance team related to some of the areas. Just to go through some of these, again, as the mayor mentioned, which I was going to mention as well, is they were finishing up the 2022 audit within the 2023 year. So it was almost like two audits were going on simultaneously, which is why some of these findings were repeated from 22 to 23. But in fiscal year 24, and working with Mr. Taylor and his team, we certainly know some of the practices of correcting these findings were occurring in fiscal year 24, which is why this was a more detailed corrective action plan based on the timing that we were writing this and looking at fiscal year 23, and to be honest, looking at what we had done in fiscal year 24 as well. So some of the findings include vendor approval. Again, we did go through this with the audit team and with the finance department. This one, as mentioned in the corrective action plan, we have limited permissions within different employees within the finance department to correct this particular item. One of the areas was the number of individuals in finance who have access to the vendor file. So I know prior to me coming on, that was something that the finance department and the IT team looked at as far as looking at just different permissions within our financial system. Another area that you heard tonight as well was bank reconciliations. We're working with Mr. Taylor and the team to correct that from fiscal year 23 going into fiscal year 24. We have caught up on bank reconciliations within this current fiscal year. And one thing you'll mention is what you'll see as well throughout this corrective action plan. I think a lot of this was also due to the staffing that the finance department had as well. I think when the mayor came on, you know, one of the priorities was to look at the staffing in the finance department as well, you know, and make significant hires that could also correct a lot of these items in the action plan. I know from previous experience, like Mr. Taylor, wearing two hats is certainly difficult, especially in a high-level position. So, again, throughout this corrective action plan, I think one of the themes you'll see is we made hiring, significant hires to correct a lot of these. But again, on the bank reconciliations, we are certainly working towards that. And, you know, again, due to the timing, working this corrective action plan from the 23 audit going into 24 as well. Looking at just a few of the other ones, segregation of duties with payroll. Again, one of the areas that we looked at was the hiring of a payroll manager, which the mayor did, and that should alleviate a lot of the permissions and areas that you've seen as far as the segregation of duties in here. With the payroll manager has worked very well with another significant hire, our personnel director, in making sure those segregation of duties exist between when employees are onboarded and changing information in the payroll system to when our payroll manager needs to change various permissions in the payroll system as well. So one of the areas that we also looked at, which also has to do with payroll, is the Board of Education. We're currently working with Matt Cavallaro within the Board of Education on this corrective action as well. Again, hiring the payroll manager certainly helped with correcting both the city and the Board of Ed's area related to payroll. On the procurement side within the corrective action plan, we did hire a senior buyer within the procurement department. The findings within the corrective action plan really had to do with making sure that we're checking on vendors that are not federally debarred or from doing business with the federal government, especially when the city or the Board of Education is receiving federal funds. That is one checkpoint that the city has to do. So that's a policy that we worked on within the procurement office once the senior buyer was hired. And the state and local federal funds, and I apologize, I know this, I'm on page 6, the coronavirus state and local federal recovery funds, that was, as Mr. Setafani mentioned, that was something with the general ledger. That was actually a one-time corrective action that had to be done. That had to do with one of the expenses related to our ARPA funds within the general ledger. So that item was actually corrected. And looking at the Board of Education on page 7, the child daycare monitoring, that is something that myself and Mr. Cavallaro are also looking at. That's really ensuring that the Board of Education monitors their grant expenditures as well, especially since that's a pass-through. In the Community Conservation Development Grant, we're working with the Grants Office on making sure those expenditures are reported to the state as well. And the last item on page 8 in the corrective action plan is school readiness, which we've outlined to make sure that the city is appropriately reporting and monitoring the subrecipients of that grant. So that's really working with the Board of Education to ensure that we're in compliance with the federal guidelines. So again, we try to write a detailed corrective action plan based on the practices that have occurred, especially going from fiscal year 23 into fiscal year 24. In the last month and a half, 2 months that I've been here, that's been one of my goals, is to formalize a lot of these policies as well. So that's something that me and the finance team has been working on as well in the last couple of months as well. So, Chairwoman, that is my presentation on the corrective action plan.
Well, thank
Happy
you.
to answer any questions.
Thank you. And I do just have one question, and I'll open it up to the Finance Committee for questions and then to the council as a whole. But the question I guess I have is around, as it relates to the segregation of duties and having two employees signing off on changes that are being made. Is there a requirement that a management level person be involved in the changes that are made?
This is the payroll one, correct?
Yeah.
So right now we do have that in place. So what happens at this moment with payroll is our payroll manager will work with the city departments on gathering all the payroll data, putting it into our payroll system. And what she will do is she will email myself, David Taylor, and Ron, the city treasurer, to review payroll before it's actually processed. So there is that secondary sign off. And in the email, what she'll do is she'll give us any large changes that have occurred or payroll adjustments. And then she'll also give us the payroll register for that week so we can look at and spot check anything that we see that's unusual.
All right, great. And is it similar for the Board of Ed?
Yes, I believe so. Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. Anyone else have any questions? Councilman
Did you forget who I
Varga?
am? Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Gormany, for being here. I appreciate it. I have several questions on the specific corrective action plan items. I do appreciate that you're looking at this with fresh eyes. You've only been here a few months, and you're looking at it with eyes of what has been done in the latter half of FY24 with this administration and with all the new hires. So I appreciate that hindsight is kind of 2020 here. But there are a few things here that I'm not going to get too granular, I hope, but a couple questions that I'd just like to have explained, and just to make sure that we are on the right track, if you don't mind. For finding 2023-001, the vendor approval material, unless I read it wrong, the corrective action plan on page 1 said that the approval process is sent around the procurement department, but then on page 2 it says that the process is supposed to be determined by the affected department for vendor management. Can you clarify who is actually in charge of vendor approvals and when it might change?
Absolutely. So the finance department is in charge of vendor approvals. So one of the areas that we looked at, again, was looking at the permissions of who can add vendors, who can modify vendors, and what areas, and what permissions and what areas employees have access to. And we limited those permissions. So what the corrective action plan is looking to do is establish a process that starts with department but ends with finance. And procurement is part of finance. Procurement is the one that's ultimately in charge of adding or modifying the vendors on our financial system. So I think we were trying to say that it's starting with departments, because what we've done is we've established, besides requesting a W-9, we've established another form that we want vendors to fill out, and that is submitted to the procurement department for verification and review.
So starting with the department is if the city clerk's office wanted to use a particular vendor, they know what information the procurement department is going to require, so they gather that information, and then they ask the procurement department or someone else in your department to vet that vendor and sign off on it.
Correct.
So the buck stops in your department.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Going to 2023-002, the bank reconciliation. I have to be honest. This is the one that I spent the most time looking at. The council receives monthly reports, and we receive, for lack of a better word, the municipal equivalent of profit and loss and balance sheets when we do our budgets. Can you tell me that reconciliations are being done now? Can you make me feel better?
So yes, I can tell you we are, Mr. Taylor and the team have worked very diligently in making sure that we are caught up in reconciliations. I can tell you, for example, we are done through April. He and the team are looking at May at the moment. Because you're generally a month behind, right? So we're looking at May. I think one of the areas, as I mentioned earlier, was definitely staffing was a big part of that in fiscal year 23 in trying to catch up on those reconciliations. But I can tell you now we're caught up through April. I think with the staff that we have in place, especially hiring, our senior accountant is now working on bank reconciliations and other staff members. I think we have a good system going at the moment. Again, like you said, I'm coming in with a fresh set of eyes. I think the senior accountant has been here a couple of months, maybe. So I think we're all coming into this and catching up on that work.
But so it is the goal of your office then at some point during the month, you have a target date of when you would like to have the prior month's reconciliation.
Good practice should be you should be a month behind. Right. So that is certainly the target, is to be, barring anything that may happen. I would love to be at least, no more than a month behind on a reconciliation. Of course, things are always going to come up, but I would say 90% of the reconciliation should always be, done at that point.
On page 3 of the action plan, can you tell me what the phrase tenant refund is? What that means?
I'm sorry, I just gotta find where you're at.
Yeah, it's on the 3A. This yes, 3A towards the middle. Any outstanding checks that have been dormant for more than 1 year for payroll checks, 3 years for tenant refunds, and payments for goods and services may need to be voided. Can you tell me what a tenant refund is?
So I think tenant refunds were really that's probably the incorrect word to use, but I think that's more along the lines of tax refunds that may have been issued, or any individual refunds similar to tax refunds that are still outstanding, basically.
Do you know if because 3 years is quite a long time. Do you know if that's by statute, or is some kind of an accounting regulation, or is that an internal requirement?
That I do not know off the top of my head, but I can certainly get more information on that.
And I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Are there any other questions, Councilman Locks?
Thanks for putting this together. I'm a big fan of corrective action reports. We're happy to have you.
Thank you.
Definitely happy to have you.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you. Especially with a fresh set of eyes, which is something we really need. When it comes to finding 001, 002, 003, 004, 005, and 006, one's a material weakness, two are significant deficiencies, one's a compliance issue, one's a material weakness, one's a compliance. I like the corrective action report very much, but it's not time bound. So, the countermeasures are great. There's a lot of age deficiencies here. And I just think that building trust with us in the city will go a long way if you can draw a line in the sand, not to put you on the spot, that by 12/31/2024, these are done and dusted and in the rearview mirror.
That is my goal, is to check off as many of these as possible. Again, as it's hard working in a current year when you're dealing with the previous year as well. So that is my goal, and that's what I've been working on the last month and a half, is formalizing a lot of these policies and checking these off the box. It's going to be a conversation with myself, the team, and the auditors, so that way we can prove to them that, yes, the practices were there, the formal policies are going in, they're in, or many are in place, and these are checked off the box. So that is my goal.
I appreciate that. Let me reword it a different way. Are these all going to be done by 12/31/2024?
I'm working on as many.
Can you at least commit? Can I propose that the vendor stuff, the procurement stuff, this stuff has sat here for a long time.
Yes.
Started in previous administrations. Here we are still talking about it. It's just not a good look.
So I can tell you some of the work that we've done on the vendor side.
Yep.
In finance is, again, making sure that permissions are updated. That is checked off. That was one of the things, not just with the auditors, but with Marb and the consultants they hired and other folks as well. We've checked that off the box. Making sure that we have proper documentation and document retention. I've been working with the procurement team to make sure that that is in place, W-9s, other forms. One of the things I've stressed also is making sure that we utilize our financial system to its maximum capability, right? We pay for it. We can actually use that for document retention, making sure that the vendor profile within that system has the W-9 and everything attached to it, right? Those are all things that I'm working on and getting into place, and that even softly implementing with certain departments, right? The assistant who does vendor codes and procurement, I've told her, make sure you get the W-9. I've showed her, this is how you attach it to our financial system, right? This is important for document retention. A couple of emails will go out this week on just reminding departments on when you're requesting a new vendor code, right? So those are things that I've already done to make sure that we're getting these checked off the box. I've talked to the procurement staff on sending out reminders on making sure you're following. If it's below 10,000, you need 3 quotes. Making sure that the suspension and debarment piece is followed. With vendor checks, making sure that the appropriate staff is registered on sam.gov to make sure that those verifications are done. So again, I'm working. There's a lot to work on.
Right.
So again, my goal is to get these things checked off the box.
Right. So when can we expect results?
Hopefully in 2024 audit. That's again, we are working under the goal of checking these off the box. We're working on the goal of making sure that the audit is done by December 31st. We're working on all these policies and procedures simultaneously, but the one thing I want to stress is I would love to have it done yesterday, very quickly, but we also want to do it the correct way. And sometimes that may take time, especially coming in, or just making sure everything's in place. But, this is one of the number one things on my priorities, to make sure we have these policies and procedures in place.
Yep. No, I appreciate that. And I understand the undertaking that you're under. I did spend a lot of time grilling Mr. Sprayer during the budget season on the procurement function, because it looks like the spend was decreased. And I know at the end of the day, between doing transactions and doing all that day-to-day work for, your internal stakeholders and that sort of thing, but you also have a lot of administrative burden that must happen, and that's the vendor management, the vendor master, and all that other stuff. So I'm not surprised to hear that it's still a deficiency. And I guess my big concern is it'll be a sad day if in May 2025 we're still having this same conversation. Not just for me, but as a taxpayer and what has taken place over the past few years. I struggle with the lack of urgency on this whole procurement function. It doesn't seem like it's a big deal. So I just wanted to get that out.
Thank you, Mr. Locks. Mayor Boer.
Yes, I appreciate the conversation. Let me help recap. Of those 6 that you identified, 4 are already closed out. So there's not 6 of the top 6 that are still open. 4 are already closed out. There's over 30 recommendations that we're working on, right? And again, this is an audit from fiscal year 23. We have a number of everything from investments to bank reconciliations to the sewage fund to Allingtown to vendor procurement to, segregation of duties. It's all coming together. We have a tracker that Protivity is helping us with. Protivity was hired by the state, which we will pay back. And they meet, and we meet every Monday and go through this tracker of every outstanding audit item, where we stand. We farm it out to the department, whether it's the clerk, how do you sign on, to Allingtown, have your personnel files come over here and clean them up. Like we have a big tracking system, and I think we have a lot of synergy between all the departments. But those top 6 you mentioned are critical, and I would say 4 are closed out, and 2 will be closed out by December 31st.
Thank you, Mayor
Under
Boer.
my watch.
Thank you. Councilman Coletti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think Mayor Boer made a couple of the points that I was going to make, just kind of making sure we put this into perspective, timing-wise, when the audit was done, how quickly the entire system basically had to be rebuilt from within, with all respect to departments, department heads, lack of employees, etc. I think at full staff now, with the goals in place that you all have, I would be pretty confident in your commitment to the extent possible that everyone is going to do everything that they can to complete whatever remaining recommendations there are that haven't already been completed. With a lot of regulatory oversight, obviously, between everything that you need to comply with, between ARPA regulations, multiple audits, etc. So that's the only point I wanted to make with respect to Councilman Law. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Coletti. Chairman.
Thank you, Michael. Welcome. Welcome. Thanks for the presentation. I just had one question as to the findings that have to do with the Board of Ed. What is your approach when you don't have the ability to wrap your hands around that yourself? Have you found that their team is receptive? And I think you probably, is it the same way in New Haven where you have to?
Yeah, it's the same way. I think what we look at is just taking it from the team approach, because their findings are a reflection on us all, just as a city as a whole, right? So I've been working with Mr. Cavallaro, Matt Cavallaro, on a lot of these, and then I also look at it from the standpoint of some of the city policies that we have filter over into the Board of Education as well, such as payroll or payables or whatever the case is, because we're also managing some of that work for them, right? Because we pay their vendors, right? They don't have their own separate payables system at the Board of Ed. So some of those policies and procedures that we're putting in place, they're going to have to follow, because that's just what we do on the city side. But I think from being here so far, they've been very receptive in some of the changes that that we're looking to implement from a policy and procedure standpoint.
Okay. There was some previous talk about trying to find some efficiencies by sharing some of the work between us. Have you seen anything or led anything that has to do with that?
To be quite honest, I've been focused in on trying to look at some of these audit matters, and then there's been a couple of other areas that I've been looking at as well. But that conversation has certainly come up, especially, you know, on the review of the payroll side. Just looking at the amount of spend on like some of the vendors, is there some shared collaboration there that we could do to sort of save some funding between the city and Board of Ed? But to be quite honest, I haven't delved deeply into that concept yet.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Chairman.
Can I just, Councilman?
Thank you. I lied. I do have one more question and then a comment. The question I have is on number 2023-007, and that's the school readiness recipient monitoring. That's a grant program from the Board of Ed. Is that right?
Correct.
So, and I understand that there's quite a bit of reporting responsibility that comes with managing that grant. Are you able to elaborate on what happened here that these reports weren't reviewed and this information wasn't gathered?
Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of that information because that occurred, but I will be more than willing to follow up with some of that information on this. What I need to look at is to review the type of reports that weren't submitted at that time.
Is this a Board of Ed? Is it a function of the Board of Ed that they're responsible for this, or is this something that falls under your office?
This is the Board of Ed. The school readiness grant is completely the Board of Ed.
Okay, thank you. And just my last comment is I just want to say that I think that's something that would be helpful for us all, the council and the taxpayers, to understand is that, you know, we didn't get here in 1 year. We didn't get here in one term, one administration. It's not going to take 1 year to get out of this. So as long as, for me personally, as long as I see that we're checking off some boxes every year, that we're making strides on all of these deficiencies, and that you're identifying the priority list of what is really needs to be handled right now, and that's tackled, and you know, and we're making strides elsewhere. I just want to see the forward momentum, and I appreciate the detailed report that you put together, and I appreciate that, you know, in the last 6 to 8 months, we've done quite a bit of work to try to narrow the gap on some of these areas. So I'm confident that we're not going to see a lot of this, you know, a year from now. And I just want to thank you all for the hard work that you're doing, and just please keep going, because I think we're in the right direction and we need to keep going. Thank you.
Can any other questions before I give it over to the mayor? Just one question that I have. You can go right after. How long have you been here?
End of April, beginning of May. April 29th, I started.
2 months?
2 months.
Okay. All right. This can't be all your work. I'm just saying. So thank you. I just wanted to recognize that.
The team that had been put in place, again, the mayor had made some hires prior to me coming on, which were great hires. So I think they've done a lot of work to get us up to this point.
Right, but here you are standing here explaining it all. So I just want to acknowledge the fact that you're brand new to this, and this has been in motion far longer than you've been here.
Thank you.
We're grateful that you're here. Dawn?
Thank
Councilman
you.
Callahan.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Hi, thank you. I have to reiterate what excuse me, what Councilwoman Kathy said, that thank you. You've come such a long way in that short time. You've come farther in 2 months than a lot of people have in 2 years. So thank you for that. And we're really excited to work with you. My one question was, is there any movement yet? I saw the recommendation for the sewer fund revenue going from Public Works over to the Finance Department. I saw that as a recommendation. It's on page 23 of the audit. But I was just curious as to where is that? And I saw that the recommendation was basically to just be sure that it's getting allocated in the proper fiscal year.
Yeah. So no, that's a great question. And I apologize, but Mr. Centafanti and I have talked quite a bit about that particular item. So if you remember, the sewer fees that are approved in the budget go through the tax office through the tax billing. This is separate billing that is done to another town for some of the sewer usage. And we've talked about just different departments and different billing, and that being one of the areas that we look at in finance as far as possibly centralizing just the overall billing and collection. So it's not coming out of other departments, and finance has more of a handle on some of that billing going forward. But we have discussed that particular recommendation.
Okay, thank you. All set. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Boer?
Thank you. I just wanted to circle back to a couple of the questions that Councilman Pascal had regarding Board of Ed, because it is, trying to gather all the information from, again, whether it's sewer or Allentown or police or Board of Ed, when they're separate entities, kind of merging and creating that synergy. The Board of Education has a tougher time because they have fewer employees in their finance department. So, for example, with something like segregation of duties, with payroll, they have one payroll person. Or segregation in accounts payable, there's one person. So creating a segregation of duties is a little tougher for a Board of Education. Sometimes it's a little challenging during the school year to get what we need. However, I will say that we have a weekly meeting. We invite Matt to those meetings. And Joe is really good. Every couple of weeks, I ask him to send me a report of what is outstanding and what he needs a little assistance with. And I reach out to Neil, and Neil makes sure we have it. So, we kind of rush people along. And then the other question was around consolidating services, and payroll is the area that we're looking at. So we hired Aaron Sweeney, who's doing an excellent job. And originally, the payroll manager was a recommendation by MARB to create a payroll manager position specifically to start to bring Board of Ed and City together, but also for that segregation of duties. So Neil and I have been having conversations in the past couple of weeks of how we do that. We're just trying to figure out union-wise personnel and how we pay for it. But, the end goal is to have Erin really be a part of the Board of Education. And she comes from the Board of Education, so that's even another strength that she has. And again, I just want to appreciate the comments. Again, this is an audit from fiscal year 2023. We received this audit in May. A number of these audit comments are repeat comments from 2022, which is the audit we received in January. So I think that the team's making a lot of progress. And with the hire of the senior accountant, junior accountant, Michael, our payroll, and all the other positions, I think we're going to get there.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay.
I just wanted to make the point that this isn't all on you and your office, because I deal with audits at my job as well, and you're not just dealing with like things that are on your desk that you can fix. This is a culture change that you have to deal with, where you're having employees who are doing things not necessarily the right way for many years, and now you have to change the culture of what they're doing. And I just think it is a tough undertaking, and you have the support of the administration behind you, which is something that you're desperately going to need if you're going to change the employees' behavior, because they're not necessarily all in your department.
Correct.
All right. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? All right. I just want to say thank you to Mr. Centofanti and to Mr. Gormany. Thank you so much. We appreciate you guys, and see you next time.
Thank you.
It's 8:15, and the council, the Committee on Finance is now closed.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to legislative matters. Councilman Vargo.
Thank you, Chairman. Time is 8:15, and your Committee on Legislative Matters is now in session. Members present are Council Members Laux, Tucker, Coletti, Johnstone, and myself acting as chair. On this evening's agenda is Communication B from Councilwoman Garthwaite regarding an amendment to Chapter 170, Section 170-15, Domestic Animals of the Ordinances of the City of West Haven. Because this is an ordinance change, we are not going to be able to act on it this evening. Councilwoman Garthwaite, did you want to say anything in addition to your email? Because if you do, then I'll ask for a motion to bring it out for discussion.
I'm curious why it can't be changed this evening. You said because it's an ordinance update.
Requires a public hearing.
Oh, thank you.
Did you have anything else? So, do you want me to? May I have a motion to bring this out for discussion?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Councilwoman Garthwaite?
So I think everybody knows I'm a really strong advocate for Sandy Point. I've been working at Sandy Point since I've come here, moved here, I should say, in 2017. We had an ordinance that we were trying to pass, and we did pass it. That was in the last council. It was for hunting. It failed with deep. This particular these issues are ongoing, not only at Sandy Point, but across all of our beaches. I think that it's extremely important to try to protect the endangered species that we have in our sanctuary, which includes the piping plovers and the least terns. We have other birds there too, which a lot of my neighbors and residents are concerned about. For the record, I'm not a bird lady. I am a dog rescuer and I love dogs, but I really do believe that dogs do not belong in a bird sanctuary. They belong perhaps in a separate beach, and maybe that's something this council can entertain, because I do believe that people love to bring their dogs to the beach. You know, I can't bring my dogs to the beach because I foster dogs that are typically more aggressive and reactive, but I would like for people to be able to have that option in the future if we could do that. But right now, I would like to protect what we have at Sandy Point, because we have lost, last year I learned today that we lost 20 hatchlings of the piping plovers. Those are just the ones that we could count. So I don't know how many we'll lose this year. I hope we won't lose that many. Also, there's some really neat birds called black skimmers that they could not find them this past year. They disappeared from our, if you will, colony, because they believe people were bringing their dogs on the beach, and people were, going into areas where, the birds were nesting. So I really do believe that this is something that should happen for all of us, and I feel that, I know that it's a big ask to up the fine to $250, but I think if we don't give that fine, or at least something more strong, stiffer like this, people will continue to do it. So this is my ask from the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Is there any other discussion before we roll it back? Councilwoman Callahan, please.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for everything you're doing. I agree with you 150% in both avenues, that we should protect the birds, and also that hopefully we can come together with a place that's safe and good for the dogs as well. Because I do believe, as a dog lover, people love to go to the beach. And I really think we have to educate our community about that, because I don't think everyone knows that, there's a lot of special species down there. But that being said, what about the fishermen? There's a lot of people that go down there to fish and don't realize. So that might be a topic for another conversation, that area, the bird sanctuary. But I do know a lot of people go over there and fish and don't realize where they should and shouldn't go. So maybe we can address that as well. But thank you for your passion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Johnson.
Thank you, Chairman. Couple things, so I ask everyone to be patient here, because I'm going to go from one point to the next in my notes. Just for something with how I'm going about this here in my discussion, for all you new council members, the question I ask you sitting here is, how many times in your district have you seen someone with their dog, but the dog's not on a leash? My concern is, and it's a good one, I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, because we should. If we raise the fine for one particular place in the city, I think we need to work hand in hand with what the mayor and her administration's tackling the blight, and that's put it citywide. So if we close the beaches, for example, after that catastrophe, the mayor took executive action. We closed all the parks for safety at sundown. I think this is becoming a more common problem. If I'm seeing it in my district, I'm sure you all are seeing it in yours, because it goes to the next point, and I don't have the answer. It just dawned on me, and I should have looked it up earlier. If the pet is not on a leash, I would assume there is no intent to pick up after the pet. It tends to go hand in hand, and we've had that problem on fields. Perfect example. Come to Pagel's Field, drive by 8 o'clock at night, 8:30, just after dark. There's people with dogs on the field, and I don't have the jurisdiction. It's above my pay grade to pull over and say, hey, get off the field, because I don't have the jurisdiction to hand out a ticket for that fine. So I think it's a good starting point, but if we're going to tackle this, I think it needs to be a city-wide, not just for Sandy Point, not just for the beach, but it's all the parks and the city properties in general, because I'm sure some of you have walked across the green lately, and you're probably going to step in something. And I'd hate to say that, but it's the God's honest truth, because we just have people that don't care. And the way to go after them, in my opinion, control the narrative and hit them where it hurts the most. Hit them with the fine. And lastly, I think also, too, is unfortunately there's always the excuse of, well, I didn't know. So I think working closely with the mayor and the administration is, do we need to update our signage at the parks and the beaches? I think that would be a good avenue to explore, especially you see it on highways, littering fine. It says the number. You go to places, I know Stratford has it in a lot of their areas. You litter, here's the fine. You don't pick up after your pet, here's the fine. So I think if we're going to do this, let's do it once, let's do it right, and be done with it. Thank you, Chairman. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilman Johnson. Any other discussion? Seeing none. Would the second please rescind?
That would be me. I withdraw my second.
Thank you. And the first? Thank you. Couple of things that I have here are, it's my understanding that the sanctuary is not actually a defined location. It's a important bird area, I believe it's called. So I'm in total agreement with Councilman Johnson. I think that this is important, but I think that this is something that we should try to do once to limit how many times we have to have a public notice and how many times we have to amend the ordinance. So I'd like to do it right the first time. So with that, this communication is going to be held this evening. And Madam Clerk, I am going to ask that it be referred out to a few departments for some additional information. If you're ready. I'd like to refer it out to Corporation Counsel for specific language identifying the area that we are going to be defining as the sanctuary. I'd also like to refer to Corporation Counsel for comment on whether or not we should include fines in section 170-15A and B. And I'd like to refer it out to the Mayor's Office and Parks and Rec for comment on whether a section of the beach can be designated as quote-unquote dog-friendly, and if so, where. And thank you, Mr. Chairman. The time is 8:23, and the Committee on Legislative Matters is in recess.
Thank you very much. We're moving on to public lands. Councilman Donovan.
Thank you, Chairman. The time is now 8:23. Committee on Public Lands is now in session. Members present: Councilman Locks, Councilwoman Callahan, Councilwoman Coletti, Councilman Johnstone, myself acting as chair. We have before us Communication C from June 10th, 2024 agenda from Mike Agello, Deputy Corporation Counsel, regarding the potential sale, lease, or transfer of a portion of 24 Front Avenue. I would like to entertain a motion to bring this out favorably.
Motion.
Have a second?
Second.
Any discussion from the committee? Seeing no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, seeing none, motion passed. The time is now 8:24, and your Committee on Public Lands is now closed.
Thank you very much. We will now be reconvening into council as a whole at 8:25. Moving on to unfinished business. On unfinished business tonight, we have two updates, one regarding the Kerrigan Boiler Project and one regarding the update for Lake Street. Madam Mayor, would you like to speak on those?
On the Kerrigan Boiler Project, it's going to the MARB this Thursday. I'm not sure specifically what was requested on the Kerrigan Boiler Project, but it's going to MARB Thursday.
Would you like to?
Yeah, I mean, essentially what we asked for is like a project plan. Like, where does this stand? Have the boilers been procured? What's the delivery date? Is October 15th still feasible? That's kind of what we were looking for.
So I apologize, I wasn't at the last council meeting, so I don't know if that was sent, who that was sent to.
I just want to note that Ken Carney was supposed to be here, and he had something else that he had to take care of with one of his properties in Bridgeport. So he was probably going to speak on that. He has more information than you, obviously. But we know for certain that the meeting is the 27th for MARB to see if the boiler project is approved. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. If that's all we have for this evening on that, then.
And Abdul was going to be here, but he had a family issue. He had to take Friday and today off. But he had sent me a recap for you. I mean, I know the recap. But as you know, so Lake Street and Colonial Boulevard, the infrastructure cannot handle the flow. You have the lake that's on Lake Street that flows into that. You have a lot of archaic infrastructure and some, additions to the infrastructure. And in some significant storms a few years back, the outflow was so significant that it wiped out the sand and it exposed the sewage. So the city had gone to their state representative, that would be me, and they asked that we look at funding for 4 phases of the Lake Street project, and they're going to work their way backwards. So they have to start, I originally thought you have to start up at Colonial Boulevard, but you have to actually start at Lake Street and work your way backwards. So at the time, I was able to secure $1,250,000 of that project. That total project cost us $3,328,000. I secured $1,250,000, which was the first phase. When I was elected mayor, that contract was not executed and that was not in motion. So I had worked to put that in motion. And needed to have a contract executed between the city and the state. We got that done in the end of February 2024. And then upon getting that contract executed, then we had to go out to bid RFP for the consultant for the project. So we worked through that process. That consultant was awarded in early May of 2024. And the scope of the project and the fees are being finalized now as we speak. That selected consultant is CDM Smith. That CDM Smith is also the same consultant that's doing all the catch basins and all our evaluation with our sewage as well. The contract between the city and the consultant needs to be approved by both DEEP and MARB. It is on the agenda for MARB this week, and the tentative schedule for the contract signing will be the end of June 2024. The consultant is slated to work if everything falls in line and everybody signs the contract timely. Don't forget, we're also at the mercy of DEEP. If everything falls into place, the consultants start work the first week of July 2024. There will need to be a public hearing for this project. That public meeting, not a public hearing, a public meeting. That public meeting will be in July of 2024. The engineering report will then be finalized after the public meeting, and that finalization timeline target date is November 2024. Final design after the engineering report and the public meeting will be January 2025. We hope the permits will be all in place by summer of 2025, construction happening in the fall, and The target date for completion is December 2025. And again, this is all subject to permits and timing. And Abdul has written this out if anybody would like a copy. He gave it to me this afternoon to read for him.
Thank you. And just to hop back to the Kerrigan boilers, there was an email from Neil Cavalier earlier today. He was deferring to Ken, who we thought was going to be here. And he had wrote in the email, we are hopeful that MAR will approve the contract for F&F Mechanical and the city this Thursday. And if it happens, we are confident there will be heat by October 15th. Just given that as a point of information that I had to share. That's really all we have.
Yeah, and I had heard it was October 15th, and it was back on. It was going to be done and dusted by October 15th. That's what he communicated to me. But I guess what I'm puzzled at is we made a motion for somebody to come here and do these report outs. So I guess probably from just a point of reference, what's the expectation there?
So I do believe that the mayor had planned on doing this because Abdul wasn't going to be here, and Ken did plan on doing that.
Okay.
But he had an emergency while we were in caucus. I found out about it. He did leave us other information that we will talk about under new business. But the expectation is that we will be doing this going forward, and hopefully it'll go a lot smoother than the first one.
And what about ongoing?
Oh, yeah, it'll be on there
So next month,
until completion.
Somebody will be here to talk about the Kerrigan Boiler Project. Somebody will be able to be here to talk about the Lake Street project to make sure it's on schedule.
Well, my preference is that it's not somebody that's costing us money, but at least something written to give to us to let us know what the update is. I thought that was what we agreed upon when we put that on the agenda, was at least something written every 2 weeks so that we know what the changes are.
Okay.
Because I'd hate to see, like I said, anybody here on overtime wading through all the things, we have to go.
No, me either. It's not practical.
Sure,
I was just,
it's sad as well.
No. It's not practical. I just want to understand what the process was. I mean, we should be managing by exception, correct?
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the expectation from me, but I don't know what your expectations are.
Every council meeting we should have something. Yeah. Absolutely.
Sure. I just want to also remind everybody that it's important to tap into your council liaisons, right? There's liaisons for a reason. There's education liaison, there's a public works liaison, there's a sewer liaison, there's a police liaison. And the role of the council liaisons, I believe, is really to be the gather the information and help communicate that to the rest of the council, right? Like Councilwoman Coletti goes to the Economic Development Commission and she goes to the P&Z and then comes back and says anything critical. So I think, the liaisons are a good resource. And then I also, any council person anytime is welcome to come. Again, I get a little cautious about paying time and a half to our employees to come. And I also caution about, putting standing things on the agenda. I'm happy if it's a quarterly report, but there's 13 council members here, so if everybody asks for 2 items to be on as a standing agenda, that's going to be 26 items, right? And I'm not saying you can't ask for those, but just want to manage our time and our expectations as well.
Yeah, I just want to comment on that too. Obviously, I'm new to the council, and a lot of the expectations are unclear, and they seem to be a moving target. So maybe that's the tone that needs to be set. I mean, maybe it's a quarterly thing. I mean, I don't know. I wanted this stuff on. I want to hear about it every month. But at the end of the day, it's not practical. But I think you as the chair should probably define those expectations so that we know what to expect.
Right.
And I think that's something that needs to be. It wasn't in the handbook.
Right.
When we joined.
Right.
So you might want to put something together so that we're clear on what those expectations are. I've reached out several times. I put things together. And to me, it's still unclear. And here I am puzzled about this update. So that's where I'm saying maybe you need to, step up, define the expectations so that we can operate efficiently.
Okay. To that point, a lot of it is chairman's discretion, and a lot of it is modified Robert's rules. So when you look at Robert's rules, it's not meant to be followed by every organization the same way. You do modify it, and I come with past practice from other councils where we've done this a specific way. But if you have any specific ideas that you want to clarify, let's talk about this, at any point, whether it be, during the council meetings or preferably not during the council meetings, as we can probably hammer something out and then put it to the council meeting later on. But also remember, it's also a vote of 7. So I've always been a team type of person, and anytime we change anything, I'd like to be by 7 members of the council, because I'm not the end all be all. I never thought of that as the chairman position. It's usually the bulk of the council. So we can always talk about something, see if there's something you need clarified, and then we can put it to the vote of the council as 7 votes is needed.
I think it would be for everybody, not just Brian Laux, just so we're clear on that.
Absolutely. All right. Any other questions on those updates? All right. Let's move on. On to committee reports. If the clerk could read the communication to the record. Communication A.
Communication A from the tax collector regarding overpayment refunds for June 2024, which will be filed with tonight's minutes.
All right. And first committee report we have up is Councilwoman Tucker, Finance Committee.
We actually don't have anything on that
there's...
committee. I don't know why it shouldn't be on the agenda.
Okay. Sorry.
Because hers were just updates.
I just wanted to talk to Councilwoman Tucker.
It's okay.
All right, we'll move on then. Maybe later. All right, first up we have, in that case, Legislative Matters, Councilman Fargo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your matters on legislative matters met this evening to discuss Communication B from Councilwoman Garthwaite regarding an amendment to Chapter 170, Section 170-115, Domestic Animals. That communication is being held for this evening, and I've asked Madam Clerk to refer several questions out to the Corporation Council, the Office of the Mayor, and the Office of Parks and Rec. And Madam Clerk, I'd like to add the City Clerk's office if they have any information defining the area of what we call the bird sanctuary in their office. I'd appreciate if they could provide that as well.
From the city clerk?
Yes, please. And that is all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to Public Lands, Councilman Donovan.
Thank you, Chairman. Time is 8:36. To the Honorable City Council of the City of West Haven, your Committee on Public Lands, to whom was referred the matter of the potential sale, lease, or transfer of the unpaved portion of 24 Front Avenue, West Haven, Connecticut, reports that the committee met on the 24th day of June 2024 to consider said matter. It is a unanimous opinion of the committee that the following motion be presented. Resolved, whereas in accordance with the request from Daniel Zor, the current owner of 28 Front Avenue, West Haven, to have the unpaved portion of 24 Front Avenue transferred from the City of West Haven to Daniel Zor, which request has been reviewed and considered by the City Council. Whereas the City Council of the City of West Haven held a public hearing on Monday, June 24, 2024, to review and discuss the proposed request and supporting documentation. Resolved, that the City Council of the City of West Haven, after review and due consideration, hereby approves the transfer of the unpaved portion of 24 Front Avenue, West Haven, to Daniel Zor, the owner of 28 Front Avenue, West Haven, Connecticut, on the conditions that, number 1, no structures be erected on the unpaved portion of 24 Front Avenue being conveyed. Number 2, that Daniel Zor shall have a survey of the unpaved portion performed at his sole expense, and a copy of which shall be provided to the Office of Corporation Counsel within 10 days of receipt. Number 3, a property description be created by Mr. Zor's surveyor at his sole expense. And number 4, Mr. Zor shall pay the City of West Haven $1,000 for said unpaved portion of 24 Front Avenue. So moved.
Thank you very much. I have a motion to approve a matter regarding the potential sale, lease, or transfer of a portion of 24 Front Avenue. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Go ahead.
So I have a couple of comments. One, I like that this will help with blight in that area. Two, I got like a little sick feeling in my stomach about this, and usually when I get that, I listen to that, and I did a little research, and 25 Herman Street, which we sold previously for $15,000, is selling for $200,000. You were told it was only worth $15,000 because it needed a bunch of improvements. None of those improvements were done. So I'm gonna say that because of this little issue where we don't have one, comps, we don't have two, any appraisal, and three, I kind of feel like this is worth more than $1,000. I'm gonna abstain tonight. It's not that I don't want the homeowner to have the property and help clean it up. It's just that I don't feel that $1,000 is enough money because, in my opinion, the city lost out last time on $185,000.
Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? None. Any abstentions? Motion carries by majority. No. All right. We now move on to action on ordinances previously presented. We have none. Any council liaison reports this evening? Seeing none. Was that you? Yeah, go ahead.
Out of respect, Mayor, I didn't know if you wanted to go first or if you wanted me to give the police update.
Sure.
If you want to start, I'll yeah.
Sure. So let's start. We'll start with good news. The latest report is that the children are improving. Both have been I always say this word wrong. Extubated. Taken off the intubator. But every report we hear is a positive progression. And we just, continue as a community to put them in our thoughts and our prayers. I just want to reiterate, we had a lot of news media here today. We had a news conference following the incident. And it just, no matter how many days go by, it just are, the juxtaposition of something so horrible with something so remarkable, right? So just something you couldn't imagine, something so awful, and then to see, what happened to save those children's lives. If you think about it, right? So the police officers had just finished their rounds checking the bars that night, right? It was 2 a.m. God forbid there was a little incident at one of the bars that they would have been involved in that, and they were following up their shift, and Officer Williamson was leaving, and he noticed the car on the beach and called for backup. Officer Miller was there. They went, and as soon as they realized what was happening, jumped into the ocean in the pitch black against the tide in their full clothing, and the suspect was out 100 yards, made it out 100 yards. So that is a long distance for them to swim. The West Shore boat was in the water within 3 minutes with additional officers on the boat. And because they had swum out so far, they created a human chain, to bring the children to shore. One of the children were unresponsive. And they performed CPR. They transported them, dispatched, the synergy of everybody in public sector, and just the timing, the seconds. You just, I don't know, if you don't believe in divine intervention, it's hard to wrap your head around that timing. And, I keep saying that they had 2 guardian angels, and it was those 2 officers that night that just happened to be going by and saved their lives. I went to go visit the mom yesterday at the hospital because, you're just compelled to go to do something, especially and speak on behalf of the city. And I just wanted to see her, obviously. And I told her that, she drove here in the middle of the night from New York as soon as she got word. She has an older child that was with her, that was staying at the hospital with her. They come without their clothing, without anything, without any family. And I wanted to let her know that even though she's not from here, this happened in a city that has an extraordinary heart and giving, and a community that wraps our heart and our arms around people in need. So we are there for her. I offered a hotel, but, she obviously doesn't want to leave their side. I said, we'll send you meals, and she said, I can't eat right now. I said, how about a hug? So she took that. And I said, as we hear more reports and hopefully more progress, we're going to circle back and see what else that you need. Maybe you'll be in a better position to, being able to help. But obviously, our public safety did a remarkable job. We're going to recognize them. I'm sure I'll punt over to you. I'm sure you're going to talk about that. That we're going to recognize the officers and everybody involved. So, really great work, and just really really proud to be a part of this community.
Thank you, Mayor. I talked to Chief Perno. I also talked to Chief Scaffarello today. So just some bullet points. Number one, if you're looking for, and I know the mayor just touched on it, but just to put it a little simpler, if you've never witnessed a miracle, that's what took place. The timing to just from A to B to the boat being in the water, having a 3-year-old myself, I haven't slept much since. My biggest advice to everybody listening and in this room is, I think the biggest thing that family needs is prayer. This is not common. And I know in the past we hear complaints at the podium, and we see the complaints online that why is it always West Haven? Why does it always happen in West Haven? For once, I'm grateful it happened in West Haven, because our guys in blue across the board and in red went above and beyond. So I urge every council member and everybody in the public, if you're able to, I would love to see it where if we're expecting numerous numbers above capacity, that we may have to move it. But July 16th, we'll be recognizing all those involved for what took place. I believe that's going to be at 7. I'll get confirmation, but I believe it's at 7 o'clock. Our commission meetings are usually held always in the general meeting room at the police department. Walk in, take your first left, meeting's right there. But definitely pray for that mother. I can't imagine as a parent, especially having 2 little ones myself. And also pray for the guys involved. Talking to both chiefs today, it hasn't hit them yet. They seem okay, but there's that time of processing that has to take place. So definitely keep that in mind. Other than that, I'm grateful of the time and the place, and this is one of the, I know we've had some real bad bruises as a city of West Haven, but this is one of those times I will march around the state and say, I'm glad I'm a Westie, because that was just remarkable. So that is my police liaison report, Chairman.
Thank you. Melly, I believe you had something? Councilwoman Garthwaite, sorry.
Thank you. Just a quick question, Mayor. Is there anything that we as a city could do, like collect money for them as a city? This was a question that was asked of me. Is that legal?
So there's been a lot of requests, right, about how do we do a GoFundMe page, et cetera. And I talked to the chief today. Typically the city doesn't do a GoFundMe. It's a nonprofit, but I'm deferring to him a little bit on that.
So we would need a nonprofit.
Well, I think I want to defer to the police chief about
Okay.
how that would work in this situation.
Okay.
Normally I know that typically somebody would start a GoFundMe. I
Right.
think it's because there's an investigation and
Right,
it's sensitive,
right.
but we all want to help as well.
Yes.
So I think we got to figure out how is it that we want to help, and then how we go about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Can I give a report too?
Absolutely.
So I'm going to thank Councilman Johnstone because I've been a little bit off my game lately. He brought it to my attention that the shelter is exploding with shelter pets, 40 cats. Oh, my goodness. So 40 cats, 1 pregnant with 9, and 16 dogs. They are in need of lots of food and supplies. So Steve and I are, Councilman Johnstone and I are going to have a pet food drive this Saturday at Hubbard Park and at Sandy Point. Hubbard Park is 8 to 10 in the morning, and Sandy Point is 8 to 11. We hope that the other council members will join us. If you'll join us, let us know so that we can add your names. It's It's this Saturday. Yep, this Saturday. 8 to 10 in Hubbard Park, and 8 to 11 at Sandy Point. If anybody wants to, if any of your constituents want to donate to you and you want to grab it, I'll come and pick it up and put it in our trucks, or you can don't take it to the shelters yourself.
Right, that's what I
Yes,
was going to say.
so
There's a certain type of food that
Yes.
they need.
So that's all on my council page on the event. So you'll see my dog Rory, who passed away recently, and that's the little picture, and it has all the little information about what they need. They need, I think it's mostly pedigree, Purina, kitten milk replacement, any kind of cat litter. What else am I missing? Am I missing anything?
We'll double check with the shelter, but there's a long list of items, and it's also too. We got to find homes for these pets.
Yes,
because they've reached out to other shelters, and what's happening is we're starting to overflow, and we're starting to, or I shouldn't say the shelter's starting to tap into the funds they don't want to, because if you add up all those animals, that is a lot of animals to feed every day, every morning, every evening. The maintenance, it's becoming exhausting on top of dealing with the normal calls throughout the day. I'm sure we all see all the time on the Ring, on Next Door. I've got a loose dog here. I've got a loose dog there. I found it. Those animal control officers have to go to those calls with a full, we'll call it a full hotel, if you will, of tenants. So let's find some homes for these pets. All my pets in my house, they're all rescues, and half of them are from West Haven Animal Shelter. So if you know someone looking, it's the old saying, adopt, don't shop.
I just want to point out that their stipend is only $2,000 for the year for pet food. So, we really do need to get some supplies in there.
Can I also add that when we stopped by and toured the facility, they not only pet food, which is a great donation, but they also said cleaning supplies is a big thing. As little as paper towels and Clorox wipes is something that would be very needed there as well. All right.
One last thing, because someone asked me, please no cash donations. If you want to make a donation, make it out to West Haven Animal Shelter. We all want to be accountable.
What's that?
Yes, thank you.
Councilwoman Tucker?
Yeah, are these animals spayed, neutered, vaccinated? And if not, will there be a plan for them to become?
So when you adopt from the shelter, you get a voucher, and sometimes they're spayed, sometimes they're not, spayed and neutered. If they aren't, you'll get a voucher, and you go to Orange Veterinary Hospital for that. They have a working agreement with that. I mean, you can also go to one of the low-cost spay and neuter clinics if you don't want to go to Orange, and it's really inexpensive. It's like, $150, $200 for, a dog. It's $110 for a cat. So those resources too. If someone needs those resources, just reach out to me and I'll give them to them.
Thank you. Any other council liaison reports? Okay, seeing none. Any new business this evening? If none from the council, Madam Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of quick updates because, actually, let me give the animal shelter update since we're on animal topic. So tomorrow, I'm getting together with the sergeant and the captain and our construction manager to finally start to go out to bid with all the aspects of the animal shelter. Yeah, so I'm very excited. When I was first elected, I was like, oh, this is low-hanging fruit. I love this shelter, and the money's already there. And it has been the most complicated project. But we got the architect drawings. The cages are already coming down. Today we took the before pictures, so it'll be fun. So I will keep you posted on that because we are building a new cat room as part of it. And then also want to let you know that we had our small business forum. I don't think I was here since that. That was really successful. We had over 100 businesses come. We had great speakers. We have so many resources that are available for the small businesses in our city. We don't really communicate them. So we have the small business grant that you had all, or the council before, and you confirmed the money, the ARPA funding for the small business aid. So we wanted to launch that program, and the applications are rolling in. But we also wanted to communicate all the other programs. So we have a loan program in the city of West Haven that's 50% forgivable, and there's an SBA grant, and there's a New Haven Chamber grant. So it was really well received, and I was excited the way it came out. And then also along the lines with the ARPA funding, the Blue Ribbon panel is meeting tomorrow all day. They'll be here meeting here because they have over 70 applications for the arts grants. So those arts grants applications have rolled in, and they'll be reviewing them and starting to make some selections. So a lot of cool things happening. And then I just want to update you quick if I can on ARPA because I wasn't here for that, and because it does relate to the council. So one of the things on the ARPA, on the MARB agenda Thursday, there's 11 non-union contracts that are on there, and one of them is the firefighter EMS, the EMS premium pay for the 3 fire districts. As you know, this has gone around and around, right? Because originally the council had recommended $10,000 for the premium pay for the firefighters, approximately 100 firefighters, and the MARB rejected that. And then there was a thought of about $7,500 for the firefighters, and the MARB had rejected that. And the reason they did, I don't want to speak for them, but their communication has been that that is not what was given to other state workers. And so they, as a state organization, they had difficulty awarding something under their purview that was more. So then I met with the 3 chiefs to talk about what their ideas were, because this $1 million was set aside for those firefighters. They had some ideas. Then I met with the union. So I think I came to a good compromise that everybody seems to be okay with, and that's what's being presented Thursday, and that is keeping with the $1 million is going to be $250,000 towards the premium pay. So that's $2,500 per firefighter, which is more in line to what the state was willing to give. Now I don't have my numbers in front of me. $300,000 for additional training for the firefighters, and then additional funding for their turnout gear, which is their cancer protective gear, which is going to be required anyway. So what I'm going to do is present, because you all put aside $1 million for hazard pay. You have not yet approved a change to that. So I'm going to go to the MARB first, and I'm going to ask them to approve it pending the council approval because of the timing with August and me going back and forth to MARB. So I just want to give you a heads up on that. So I'm going to ask them to approve it pending the council approval, and then we still are awaiting UHY approval on whether the training is definitely acceptable by federal standards. So if they approve this Thursday, then we will be coming back to you on that. So I just want to give you a heads up with that. And then just the other thing on the 3 fire districts. So we're also presenting the Allentown construction funding request. The West Shore Fire Department has, they're doing construction because they had a lot of flooding. It went out to architectural work. They're waiting for some of those bids to come back. When we have those, we're going to go before the MARB and that. The Center District, however, we do not have any plans in front of us yet. So we're starting to race against this clock. So we're going to be giving them a deadline that we need to have some sort of contracts in front of us because, if we don't do this in time, we're certainly not leaving a penny on the table. So I have met with them a few times. I've met with the commissioners. I know they had some good ideas. We just need those ideas on paper, and we need to start, going out to bid and looking at those projects. So just want to give you a heads up on that as well. So there's your ARPA update.
Perfect, thank you. What the mayor was reading off is what Ken Carney had left behind for us, and it is the tracker that we're used to seeing on the ARPA projects. So I just wanted to submit that into the record with the clerk. Also, there's another paper here, which I believe is the locations of the cameras that we've been talking about. So if the council, I know we passed them out to all the council members, take a look at them. That will also be in the record for the folks at home. Any other new business? Councilwoman Coletti.
Thank you, Chairman. Just one quick follow-up to Mayor Boer on the Small Business Forum. That was extremely successful. If you missed it, or you need additional information, it can be found online. But our new economic development director was Steve Fontana was fantastic in running it, and he made it very clear that anyone that would like a resource, would like to be directed to a resource, would like assistance with anything, consider him your starting point. Contact him directly at City Hall, and he will point you in the right direction in case anybody missed it. Thank you.
Absolutely. All set. Councilwoman Callahan.
Thank you. Also, to follow up, I was there as well, and it was a fantastic turnout. Really, and it was well done. The presenters, short and sweet, to the point, with the their PDF presentations, or it was so well done. Really, congratulations, Mayor, on that, because some people can get carried away, but it was like, okay, you have this time, but I think it was enough, basically, to maintain everyone's attention, enough so where nobody, everybody got enough information on every single topic. So it wasn't just the grant, it was also loans, it was also energy, gas, UI. They were all there, so it was fantastic. And to follow up with Councilwoman Coletti, that also on our city website there is a tab that I believe was made as well, that you can get all the grant information as well. I did also want to add, I was away, but I got a nice gift when I came home, so I have a new recycle bin. Thank you. Well done. Thank you very much.
Any other new business? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.